look at it again. And listen, guys, I've made no secret about it. I support Uncle Trump. I've made no secret about it, okay? You guys know that. Everybody knows that has ever watched any of these videos. I don't want DeSantis. I don't want Nikki Haley. I don't want Pence. I'm for Uncle Trump. But, in that, I felt like, I was just completely dismissing everybody. Obviously, we have checked out videos of Ron DeSantis. And I do agree with a lot of the stuff he says. But like I said, the jury's still out on DeSantis. I don't know if that's all a show. Y'all can let me know in the comment section if you think that's all just a show. But Ramaswamy, I believe that's how you say his name, recently went on Fox, and I wanted to check him out a little bit. I'm not saying that it's going to completely change my mind on who I want to represent the Republican Party, but, I'll hear him out. I don't see any harm in listening, okay? I highly doubt, I think there is about a less than a 1% chance that he's going to change my mind on supporting Uncle Trump, but I'll give him his 0.5% shot, all right? So like, share, comment, hit that subscribe button if you are new, and let's dive in.
Vivek Ramaswamy, a Republican president candidate, author of a brand new book called Capitalist Punishment. Get to the book in a moment here. Good morning to you. Here's a clip from the president yesterday. He was talking in Washington, D.C. about his hunt for a second term. Watch.
Our economic plan is working. We now have to finish the job. Meanwhile, guess what my MAGA Republican friends in Congress are up to? Same old trickle down dressed up in MAGA clothing.
He mentioned MAGA several times. You called him a hollowed out husk yesterday.
That's right.
That's we're gonna have to dive into that a little bit. But the Democrats have gotten good at coming up with something and just repeating it over and over and over again until it sticks in people's heads. MAGA Republicans, the MAGA Republicans. The far-right extremist MAGA Republicans, threat to democracy, threat to democracy, threat to democracy, threat to democracy. Have y'all noticed that? Like, they just always repeat it, even when it doesn't make any type of sense, which 99.9% of the time it never does. But they just say it anyway. It's crazy. Republicans need to enact that same type of strategy.
They're up to same old trickle down dressed up in MAGA clothing.
He mentioned MAGA several times. You called him a hollowed out husk yesterday.
That's right. I think it's a farce that Biden is actually the one running for president. Nominally, he is. But the essence of what's going on is this is the managerial class putting up their puppet, their stooge. And when you see it that way, it starts to make sense, where his cognitive deficits, right, that's not a bug to them. That's a feature, just like it is of John Fetterman, because it lends him more easily to capture and control from the people who are actually pulling the strings. Notice Susan Rice stepping down just the day before he declares, right? The people who are actually driving the agenda have a very convenient front man, and the more independent thinking he is, the more difficult it would be for them. So once we see that, everything else, I think, starts to make more sense. Biden's not really running for president. That's where I'm at on this.
Okay, so...
Ooh. Well. Vivek. Starting off hot, I might say, because I completely agree today. Yeah. His alleged cognitive downslide isn't a bug. It's a great feature for the establishment. The fact that he can't remember what he even ate yesterday is great for them, because they get to give him note cards that tell him exactly what to say, when to say it, exactly who to call on, and how to answer the exact question, the exact way that they want him to answer it. I'll be darned. Vivek, you are onto something there, my brother. Vivek is definitely onto something. Wow. And I'm sure that probably, also leads towards, legislation as well. He's not reading all of this stuff. At least I would assume he's not reading all of it. Some of those bills are crazy thick. If I remember correct, what was the bill that they pushed forth right before the holidays last year? The omnibus bill, and Jim Jordan, I think it was Jim Jordan that rolled it out, and the thing was like this thick. Like, I mean, you could barely get your hands around the darn thing. He's not reading that stuff. At least I would assume he's not. I would be willing to bet that he's not reading any of that. So he's relying on people to tell him what's exactly in the thing. And, hey, who knows if he's even really cognitive enough to, even remember some of the things that he wants. They could probably tell him anything. Yeah, the American people really wanted this. Just go ahead and sign there, and there. Okay? It's not a bug, it's a feature. Wow. And whatever happened to Fetterman? Is he out of the hospital yet? Actually, no. I think I do remember seeing him walk to like his office or something, and they were like asking him, how are you feeling or something. He just waved, glad to be back or something. Like he didn't really answer the question. It was kind of awkward, but anyway.
That's what you think, but let's talk about the economy for a second, because that's what he wanted to do yesterday. So you've been out meeting with voters.
Whoa, why'd she change the subject like that? That was kind of weird. All right.
Yes.
And when the Democrats say that abortion is the big issue on the table, and they're worried about MAGA Republicans, you've met with voters, and I'm assuming there are some people that you meet that are maybe on the fence, independent voters, especially like when you go to Iowa.
Yep.
What do they say is the most important issue? And I look at this here, call for number 2. Stock market decline in value since Biden took office is $687 billion.
So the economy is a huge issue to voters, including in places not just Iowa, but across the country.
And when the Democrats say that abortion is the big issue on the table, and they're worried about MAGA Republicans.
It is a big issue, and we saw that in the midterms. I think it is. I think it is. I believe that was one of the big things that affected midterms. Some of the polls that were coming out were saying that abortion wasn't that big of an issue. And it was just kind of, it was an issue, but it wasn't that big of an issue. But then when we saw some of the, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong. Correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong, because I'm wrong from time to time. Okay, I'm not immune to being wrong. But if I remember the exit polls, abortion was like the top issue, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I definitely think that is an issue for sure.
You've met with voters, and I'm assuming there are some people that you meet that are maybe on the fence, independent voters, especially like when you go to Iowa.
Yep.
What do they say is the most important issue? And I look at this here, call for number 2. Stock market decline in value since Biden took office is $687 billion.
So the economy is a huge issue to voters, including in places not just Iowa, but across the country, including in New Hampshire. I'm going to South Carolina later this week.
I wish I had that kind of number in my bank account.
Now, some will say that you can't blame a U.S. president for the stock market, but in this case, here's why you can. Because inflation actually created the conditions for the Fed to have to hike rates as rapidly as they have. That's directly the cause of the stock market declining. So this does fall on Biden's feet. I think the other thing people are hungry for is a revival of our national self-confidence. We've lost that. People aren't proud of our country. But you know how one of the conditions that makes it easier to be proud of a country is where people are making more money. And so Democrats will talk about tax increases. Republicans may debate spending cuts. It's as though we've forgotten there's a better way to solve this. GDP growth itself, economic growth, getting Biden out of the White House and somebody who actually understands this in the White House. That's why I'm running is a key step to that.
I think your background's interesting, too, and you've been an American success story, so you can talk about that positive outlook. Yeah. But back to part of the question that Dana was going at. The issue of abortion is out there.
Yes.
Nikki Haley was talking about it yesterday. As governor, she signed a bill that would ban abortion after 20 weeks. She made an exception for a mother's life, but no exception for rape or incest. She thinks a federal law should be implemented. Donald Trump says we should not do a federal law. Where are you on this position now?
So I come down on principle. On one hand, I am unapologetically pro-life. In fact, I've been a leading advocate of getting Roe versus Wade overturned. That was the correct decision. On the other hand, as a pro-life person, I do think that abortion is a form of murder. But if you think that murder isn't regulated by the federal government, murder is done by state statutes. That's how the Constitution works. And so for those reasons, because I view abortion as a form of murder, because I believe in the Constitution, because I believe Roe was wrongly decided, this is an issue for the states. But I also think that that's why states should adopt a pro-life stance. And
I do believe in less government control. I don't care, on a vast array of things. I don't think that the government should be in control of, things. I think it should be on an individual state level. The less government, the better, especially with what we've been seeing, across the board. The government, in my humble opinion, has completely failed us across the board. I mean, you name it. And it's just like, yep, nope, nope, not that either. Nope, not that either. So, I think we need a complete reversal in, a lot of things. And one of those things is a whole lot less government, whole lot less government. And we need to get back to the people knowing everything about the government and the government knowing a whole lot less about us, because that's the way it was intended to be. But now it's the complete opposite. We know nothing about the government and what they're doing, how they're doing it, blah, blah, blah. And as far as like the military goes, I get that. There's a strategic advantage to the public not knowing, a whole lot about what the military is doing. All right, I understand that. I get that. I can make an exception there. But the exception doesn't make the rule. For the most part, we should know what the government is doing. And for the most part, the government shouldn't know exactly what we are doing. Okay? So that's just my thought process on it. Maybe I'm wrong. Y'all let me know how you feeling about it in the comment section. Maybe I'm an idiot. Talk to me.
what I think is more Americans are pro-life than will admit it. Clarence Thomas famously brought up the case of a woman walking down the street, pregnant woman, assaulted, fetus dies as a consequence. There isn't a person in this country that thinks that person should not be held liable. That tells me most of us are actually pro-life, even if people.
That's a great point. I've never thought about putting it that way. Wow. Yeah.
People don't admit it.
Would you make an exception for rape, incest, or the health of the mother?
Health of the mother is an automatic exception because that's still part of being pro-life. So absolutely. And I don't think this has to be as divisive of an issue as we make it out to be. The part of the conversation I want to see is more sexual responsibility for men. We don't talk about that enough.
I'm for that, but too, but on rape and incest?
On rape and incest as well, I think those are exceptions for actually having a peaceable society around this issue. Yes, especially kids who are the subject under the age of 18 of rape. I think that's an appropriate exception.
And one more thing on this, because you're going to get them when you're up in the debate stage anyway. What is your restriction on a time period?
So look, I think
is it 6 weeks? Is it 15? Is it 20? What would you support?
So well, first of all, I want to be very clear about this. This is not an answer for the president, because I think the federal government should be out of this. But if you're a governor or you're dealing with this in the states, I can share with you my opinion on it. If life ends, right, when do brain waves end? That's how we determine when life ends on the back end. I think we should apply a consistent principle on the front end. That's around the 6-week mark that brain waves do begin. So I think that's the right way to think about the issue at the state level. But on constitutional grounds, I've been very clear, this issue belongs to the states. Just like murder is regulated by the states, so too should it be for abortion.
Just be clear, you're in the same position that Ron DeSantis is then, based on the bill he signed last week in Florida. 6 weeks.
I think that that's a reasonable bill for him to have signed. Absolutely. But this should be an issue for the states, not for the federal government. I've been very clear about that.
A lot more to come on that. There is.
Wow, that's interesting. I've never thought about it from that perspective. If we determine how life ends through brainwaves, which I didn't even know that we did that. Guess I never really paid attention to it, but then we should determine that on the front end. If we determine that on the back end, if we determine when life ends through this way, then we should determine when it begins. Do you guys agree with that? I mean, to me, on its surface, at least, obviously I haven't dug really deep into it quite yet. Obviously, just now hearing about it, but on its surface, it makes sense. But how do you guys feel about it? Do you think 6 weeks isn't enough? Because I have heard people say, it sometimes can take a woman a month because, periods and whatever, missed period or whatnot. How are you guys feeling about it? Let me know. Is 2 weeks not enough? Do you think a little bit more? Do you think even less? Or do you think that's about right? Talk to me. Let me know how y'all feeling about that. I mean, that's interesting. It makes sense in my mind. But
it's a poll that says young Democrats are not sold on Biden. 25% of those under the age of 45 say they would definitely support Biden in a general election, compared with 56% of older Democrats. As you're out there and you're looking at this, do you think that you could bring them over? I mean, if abortion is an issue for them as voters, and we saw that in Wisconsin in the Supreme Court election, right? Especially at the University of Wisconsin in Madison.
Yes.
The turnout rate, unbelievable. So when you look forward, if you wanted to grab some of those Democratic voters, how would you do that?
We're seeing it on the ground, Dana. We are bringing those young independents and even some young centrist Democrats. I think we're going to bring them along with us. I'm the first millennial ever to run for U.S. president.
That's interesting.
As a Republican. And one of the things I do is I go to college campuses across this country. And you want to know what I hear? They say they've invited other presidential candidates in the Republican field who won't go. And I understand why, because they get the kinds of questions that I get. But what I do, whether it's Don Lemon on CNN or a college campus, I go to the other side and debate them. But with young people in particular, what I see is they're really lost. They're hungry for a cause, for purpose and meaning. And if we can give them a positive vision, I think we bring many of those young voters along to the Republican Party.
You think that Biden is too old to run?
I think Biden is too cognitively incapable to run.
Okay,
Some
so
older
then,
people might be capable. He's not.
I see. Okay, so you would say, so President Trump.
I agree with that.
He's running again.
Seems perfectly fine to run to me. Okay. Yeah, President Trump does. President Biden does not.
What's the elevator pitch on the book?
So the book actually highlights this farce that we just vote every November. We don't. People vote every day with their dollars. And what we're seeing, especially under Biden, is using the private sector, capital markets through the back door to get done what they couldn't get done through the front door, using the retirement accounts of everyday Americans to vote for racial equity audits. And
yeah, that's another thing that we need to dive into as well. Brands and companies that aren't supporting this crap, because like you said, and I've heard about this as well, and it's been my fault. I'll take the blame for not really covering it as much as I should have, or really covering it ever. I don't think I've ever really touched on it. I remember hearing about it though. Maybe I have. I don't remember. I make so many videos. Goodness gracious. But yeah, I'll take the blame for that, and that's my fault. And maybe we should dive deeper into that and talk about or try to discover companies and ways that we can take our dollars out of these big corporations. Like allegedly Vanguard and allegedly BlackRock. That push our dollars into these woke things and policies, and get them into some companies that are going to really have our back or have our interest at heart. If anybody knows some companies, let me know in the comments section.
Emissions caps. That's what firms like BlackRock do, literally using your money, our money, to do it. This lifts the curtain on. And
he said, and like he said, it's a way to control us through the back door because they can't go through the front, right?
That scam. And I think that knowledge is the first step to empowerment. Once you see that happening with your money, it's hard to unsee it. And so I've worked on that as an entrepreneur. I wrote this book, actually, I started this company, Strive, to compete with BlackRock. I wrote this book long before I actually knew I was running for president. But now that I am, I still wanted to put it out. I'm donating all of my personal proceeds to a nonprofit that's pursuing and helping pursue litigation against American Express for its racial equity audit practices that discriminated against its employees. But what I want to do is inform everyday Americans how they don't have to wait till the election. With every day their dollars, they can actually realign their actual beliefs with making money instead of pushing progressive policies.
Good to talk to you. It was a long.
Yeah, great talk there. Great conversation. And I happen to agree on the few topics of discussion that we had there with Vivek. And one thing that I will say in terms of, because they talked about him pulling centrist over onto the right and, some, centrist Democrats over to the right and some younger folks to the right. I definitely think it would benefit Uncle Trump if he had someone. Now, listen, this is the first time I'm seeing or really listening to Vivek for an entire video. I've seen him. I recognize the name and whatnot, but don't really know much about him. But if he is truly one of those folks that, is more centrist, or like DeSantis, in we've checked out videos where he actually pulled Democrats in Florida to vote for him instead of the Democrat. Lifelong Democrats. I think I showed you guys the video. I remember some black gentlemen that were on the video that were talking about they had been lifelong Democrats, but they were like, nah, I'm voting for DeSantis, period. So I definitely think Trump needs somebody like that because of what the left has done to the Trump name. It's become like Pavlov's dog. There's a lot of people on the left that hear their name Trump and they just get angry. They don't even know why they're angry, but it's because the left has made that name just like such a bad thing, even though it doesn't make any sense, but the left has just repeated it so much. MAGA Republicans. You know, we heard that at the beginning. So I definitely think it would benefit Trump if he had someone that could really pull, more independence. I mean, I think Trump's going to win regardless, but more independence and more centrist Democrats over to the right, because then I think he would have a lot easier time while he's in office, bringing the country truly back together and really getting things back on track. So if Vivek's that guy, now, once again, this is just one video, but I wouldn't mind Vivek being a vice president for Trump, right? And if DeSantis checks out, which, like I said, the jury's still out on DeSantis. I'm not too sure about him. But if he checks out to be exactly who he says he is, which, like I said, the jury's still out, I'm not too sure. I mean, on his surface, he seems great, but I've seen some things that, give me a cause to pause. But if he checks out, then I wouldn't mind him being, a vice, somebody that can just pull some even more people onto the Republican side and truly end this madness. But like I said, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. How are you guys feeling about the 6 weeks? Did you guys agree with a lot of the things Vivek said? Do you guys agree with my statement? And Trump needs, someone possibly like Vivek that can pull people from the left onto the right? Let me know. Or do you guys think, hey, we should double down on the Trump style and get somebody in there that's just like him? Talk to me. Like, share, comment. Hit that subscribe button if you're new. Peace and love. I'm out.